Okay, now we're going to put together the stables. Now the stables is just one sheet, a lot of tightly packed stuff here, and as always the first thing you want to do is to score along the score lines. So get out your dull ballpoint pen. I would not advise scoring with the back of an X-Acto knife. I've heard of it being done. Don't do it. Dry out a ballpoint pen. Remove the ink canister from a perfectly functional ballpoint pen if you have to. That's what I did with this one. Sometimes it still writes in ink. Surprises me. But most of the time it is dry. Now this one has a lot of score lines, so you make sure you hit them all. Because this piece, this one big piece, forms the base of this whole structure that is the halfling stables, where they keep their ponies and such. So make sure that you scored all the lines on here, because having everything fold right is important, especially this diagonal line. It's a big deal. I'm going to cut out these little windows first because I want to. Alright, there are some pure white areas on this one that you should not cut out, and those are the areas of shininess on these crystal structures. So, like this piece right here, this little white spot here, or this white spot down here, you do not need to cut those out unless they have a sort of clearly defined brownish border. Okay? Or hazily defined. If they don't have a brownish border, don't cut them out. It's just a highlight on a crystal. So, I mean, if you cut it out, yeah, it's not a big deal. But they're not intended to be cut out. So, don't. Alright. There are a lot of windows. Maybe by the time you're done, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, why are there so many windows in a stable? I can't answer that. It's secret. Also, you'll wonder, why are the windows rounded? I thought it would be cool. And it was. So, in your face. There are a lot of rounded parts on here. And if you don't get the round parts exactly right, it's okay. Sometimes I don't either. Point is, it'll still look good. And it looks like I forgot to score. If you're cutting, you realize you forgot to score something, go back and score it. Don't cut it out first. It'll be easier before you cut it all out. Alright, well, just cutting along. See, it's shattered my X-Acto knife. If you break off the tip of your X-Acto knife, it's okay to cry. There's no shame in that. Sometimes you just gotta let the tears flow. Okay, and I've cut out most of the interior spaces. Just got to cut out this last piece here. And what I'm going to recommend for you to do is, once you've got this piece cut out, to go ahead and glue it down, because it's kind of important. You want to make sure that it's in the right place and that it's got a chance to dry, and then everything else is just gonna kind of attach to that. Well, almost everything else. There's some parts that aren't, but almost everything else is going to attach to it. So if you got this glued down first, I think it'll go smoothly in terms of trying to put everything together quickly. As you're cutting out the outside of the shape, you're going to be thinking, oh wow, I'm sure glad there aren't a bunch of round spots on here. See? Those rounded parts made you appreciate the rest of it. You're welcome. Okay, so these parts fold up and then down to make this basic stable structure. Okay? And that gets glued straight on. You don't have to worry about gluing anything inside. There aren't any internal parts on this one. So you glue down one to base 5 and one to base 3. Watch your ground textures. Everything should line up nice and clean, so that you don't have any problems there, and you kind of can't even tell where those tabs are, except that one. Stay. Okay. Once you've made sure those inside tabs are set, you want to glue down 1 to base 1. And 1 to base 2. Okay? You don't need to focus about 12 to base. That's not me writing 1 to base 2 wrong. That's gluing down part 12 to the base. In this case, I did not make a mistake on that. Which isn't to say that I haven't ever made any mistakes. Just not on that this time. Okay, so while that's drying, get this nice thing. It should fold flat. We're not going to test it too much right now, except to make sure that this middle part, you might have to push on this corner a little bit the first time it folds to make sure that it gets a nice clean crease, and you shouldn't have to worry about it after that. Okay? Let that get a little more dry. Push any parts down that have come up, and we'll start cutting out the rest. Now this one has a lot of sort of smaller parts, so make sure you don't lose anything as you're going. Don't throw away anything until you know that there's not a part on it. Okay, so when you're cutting out these little slots, they're really tiny. Do not cut through all the way to the side, or you'll have to glue like another piece on. And it shouldn't be hard to find another piece. Like if you need a wood texture, there's a lot of extra sort of textured parts in the back that you can pull from. But so if you have to do repairs, make repairs, but these sides need to be solid. Beside the tabs, if you cut through here, just glue something on so that it doesn't slip off. And be careful when you're cutting so that you don't cut through there. Always easier to be careful up front than to fix later. Sometimes. I should say it's sometimes easier to be careful up front than to fix later. Sometimes spell check does it for you. You know? Okay, and I would also advise maybe gluing these ones down as soon as you've got them cut out too, so that you aren't losing, especially these two little pieces. They're very important, and with these parts, it doesn't matter which side they go on. They fit right onto those tabs, and then you're going to glue down these two 5-to-1 connections here, and these two 4-to-1 connections here, and there you go. That's looking good. And then we're going to cut out these horsehead signs, which pretty much loudly proclaim this is in fact a stable, along with all the hay, horse manure. Might as well glue these on too. And again, I've noticed two places where I forgot to score. Forgot to score these parts here and these parts right here. So if you notice that you forgot to score something, do it right away. It will be better if you take care of your problems as soon as they happen. There's like a life lesson there too. I don't know if you caught that. Kids, if you take care of your problems as soon as they happen, then they won't turn into bigger problems later on. Alright, these next parts are pretty tricky. A slightly smaller glue tab. So I'm going to go ahead and recommend that you glue them down first now. This is the parts 7-to-1 and 8-to-1. You glue them down as soon as you get them cut out, and we'll just on the top, not on the bottom yet. So you're just gluing this piece to the top. The bottom of it is going to attach to the base, but we're not going to do that yet because we want that top connection to be good and dry before we try gluing the bottom connection. These are parts that don't have a ton of surface area on their connection points, and so we want to make sure, see that fall off? We want to make sure that they are nice and dry before we move them around too much. That way we only have to glue them once instead of 2 or 3 times. So we've glued 7-to-1, now we're gluing 8-to-1, and we are going to leave those there while we work on some other stuff. The crystals. Pretty standard fantasy, and I like drawing crystals, I've discovered. So decided we'd have some crystal growths outside of the stable. Maybe they're sugar crystal licks for the horses, the ponies. Or maybe it's the remains of a meteorite. Meteorite. Or perhaps the crystals have just grown here out of the general magical essence of the land. Perhaps they're signs of something darker. Magical corruption or something. Alright. So 6 to B1 and 6 to B2. It's a really simple part. It's going to pop itself up. And it's going to match up perfectly with the ground texture. So you just need to glue it down. This other piece will not pull itself up, but requires the help of the structure. So what we're going to do first is glue the connection piece, which is part number 11. We're going to glue that connection part 11 to 1 is the number. It's right there. They fold down to make a little table with connection pieces on both sides. You glue 11 to 1 first, and that will be all ready when we want to glue 11 to 12 and 12 to B. Now I did include another little crystal part here that can be glued onto something if you want, and we'll glue that in a second because I want to glue it on somewhere. First I'm waiting to see if I mess up. If I mess up, I can glue it on top of that. Problem solved. It's as if I never messed up. Alright, 11 to B down, and 12 to B, and 11 to 12. So that should hold itself together while it dries. And let's cut out this other little crystal. Give ourselves a little more time for these two parts to dry. And we're going to glue that somewhere creative, you know. Full creative license. You can glue that wherever you want. I'm going to glue it to the roof here. Like it's growing out. Yeah. Okay, so that's all glued together there. That's glued there. It's now time to glue these bad boys down. And what we're going to want to do is fold them down like that. And then we're going to glue them onto the base. Now they have to line up so that their edges come right to the center of the base, and that's important. They'll be right against each other. 7 to base and 8 to base. Form a square. Again, this part is a little tricky, but you can see how they come together right there. Okay. So we let that dry for a second. Count to 10 maybe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then we'll fold it to see how everything works. And everything's folding. On the first fold, always watch stuff. Make sure that they're not going too weird. Looks like this piece pulled up a little bit. I'm going to cinch that back in before I fold it all the way. Again, if you are patient, you could probably let things dry a little bit first. It's not really me. Okay. And then pops back up. So everything looks good. That is the Stables pop-up terrain. Thanks for watching.